Speaking of never leave, hopefully none of these recruits ever leave that we
Yeah,
got
there
this
you go.
weekend.
Love that segue.
We're going to be talking about Big Cat Weekend. Mike G was live on the premises, um, checking out all of the action from Big Cat Weekend. Before we get into the specifics of it, just kind of give us an overview of what the environment was. This is your second year in a row down at Big Cat Weekend.
Yeah.
How was it in year two under Coach Freeze during Big Cat Weekend for you?
It was interesting. The recruits all started to show up around noon. Their parents were pulling up. Had a recruit pull up in a cyber truck. Uh, it was an interesting start. The vibe was good. They were bumping, Biggie and Pac in the lobby. I was like, man, whoever's playlist this is not one of this generation's. It was our generation. They had our generation going in there. And it was most of the bells and whistles that you expect from Big Cat. They do a scavenger hunt, they play games, right? Like they bond with their possible future former teammates, they eat. And recruits really get a chance to see what Auburn is all about. Now, I did get a chance to talk to like many different sets of parents in the lobby before Big Cat got started. And I can tell you that Auburn has an effect on families. I don't know. I mean, I don't. I know this sounds very Dieselish of me, but like Auburn, it captures your heart, and the parents said that quite a bit when I was talking to them before. Now, for a lot of them, it wasn't their first time to Auburn,
Right.
but they said, no matter how many times we come here, the feeling is always the same. It feels like home. So it was good from that aspect. Now, Big Cat got cut short because of weather.
Hmm.
I Everybody remembers last year the the pool.
Right, the epic pool scene, Coach Hugh Freeze getting tossed into the pool, all of that. The
Yeah,
flip of
well, it
Perry
was
Thompson with a literal flip into the pool, all of that, yeah.
it was thunder and lightning, so they skipped the pool part this year and they cut it a few hours short. But what I did notice was even though the activities ended a little early, families and recruits hung around for quite a bit. Until after supper for a lot of them, just talking to coaches and mingling with their again potential future teammates. And I thought it was a successful weekend for Hugh Freeze. He looked focused. He looked very everything needs to be perfect. That was kind of where Hugh Freeze was at with this. So it was a good weekend. It was a really good weekend.
Yeah, one of the things that I noted, that I think is gonna be interesting is that, at media days, we got an opportunity to have just kind of an earlier sit down with Coach Freeze, before he went out and addressed the entirety of the media, ESPN, etcetera. They took time for the Auburn media, and I was in that room, and one of the things that he talked about was the conversations he had been having with the recruiting staff about like what happened with the lull of like, there just wasn't any activity going on in recruiting. And he was like, yeah, I got to go have a conversation with Will about that. Um, and that to me kind of spoke to the fact that Hugh Freeze has recommitted himself a little bit more to being present in that QB room, which Peyton Thorne had talked about. So Big Cat Weekend was his opportunity to really get back into the swing of some of that recruiting stuff that he loves to do. And to your point, he's there and he's focused in that moment because he hasn't really been in the trenches with that like he was last season. So that actually gives me a little bit of confidence going into this year about what the offense could potentially look like. It could look a lot more like the coach Hugh Freeze offense that people are expecting from Auburn. But as we get into the season, we'll see, how much that pays dividends. But more specifically, the Big Cat Weekend, good to see Coach Freeze and his staff out there really doing work this weekend. You and I were talking a little bit before we got on screen and talked about like this is touted as the biggest recruiting weekend of the year for Auburn. And honestly, I'm going to be honest, as a guy who's not big on recruiting, it was a little anticlimactic for me, right? Because you got 5 recruits, 3 of them were 2026 guys. So you
Yep.
only got 2 guys for the 2025 cycle. And I was expecting a little more from that. But say all that to say, I'm not disappointed. It just, to me, I was like, oh man, they about to have something crazy happen. I don't know that anything crazy happened other than maybe the subsequent flip back of Antonio Coleman, which we'll get into in a minute. But what were your thoughts on
Yeah,
that,
and
Mike?
hold on. Yeah, the Antonio Coleman thing was interesting. Our guy Cole Pinkston over on three was just like, hey, I think he's headed back to Alabama after this. Who knows what's going on there? Obviously, if they accepted his commitment, they really want him. But I'm with you. It felt a little underwhelming because of the hype that was coming. Now, look, Auburn is ranked number one in the 2026 recruiting rankings. So if you did enough work to be ranked number one, and the way these recruiting classes are falling, Ike, the you got to get your guys in the fold sooner
Yeah.
than you did before with early signing day and guys wanting to commit before their season starts. You've got to do it sooner. And I think that Hugh Freeze put a focus on that. So, I mean, they've got 18 commits in this class currently.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not sure about how many they can take this cycle.
Quite a bit, I would imagine, just because of the
Right. Yeah.
number of upperclassmen that are in there, and Coach Hugh Freeze's continued commitment to saying we're going to stick with um, high school recruiting as our bed. I would assume that they're gonna I'd be shocked if it wasn't 25 recruits in this class.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at it and you're thinking, all right, well, they still got work to do then. You've got to get seven more bodies in here. There's not a five-star in this group yet.
Right.
I think they got 11 4 stars and seven 3 stars right now. But it did. It felt like there would be more of a 2025 flavor to this Big Cat weekend, and there wasn't. There wasn't a Perry Thompson moment
Right.
this weekend. But they're doing great work. They're bordering on top 10. So you know what that means. That means, you're a couple of recruits away of jumping up there in, between like 7 and 5.
Right.
If they get the right recruit. So we'll see. I know that there's some guys still left on the board that Auburn wants, and they've obviously got room to take a few. So we'll see what they decide to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I plan on at some point during this week, maybe this Wednesday, we'll have him back on talking with my guy Duke the Scoop to get some more info on
Yeah.
that. I haven't had my follow up conversation that I promised with Caleb Jones about that, so we've got some more insight coming to you guys specifically about what will be happening with some of the guys that maybe didn't commit during Big Cat Weekend, but have plans to commit in the coming weeks or coming days. Following Big Cat Weekend. But as Mike G said, according to 247, Auburn currently ranked as the number 11 recruiting class in the country, 18 total commits, 11 of those being 4-star, 7 of those being 3-star commits. Um, and you're really just one 5-star away from being top 7, really. Like, I really
Right.
believe that if Auburn lands one 5-star in this class, they're already in the top 7. And then when you add on the other 4 and 3 stars that will subsequently commit, because again, I do expect Auburn to take somewhere in the range of 24 to 25 in this class, that will likely get you into a top 5 class, right? Like, or very like on the edge of it. And again, that's only with one 5-star in that. So we'll see where things goes. But specifically, my bad, you sound like you're about to go somewhere with that, Mike.
Well, I think you were about to go into the actual
Yeah.
2025 commits, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where I was going.
Yeah, so for Big Cat Weekend, as far as recruits that happen, you had your edge rusher from Huntsville come in, Hezekiah Harris. He's a 2026 commit. Shadarius Tootle, who is from Mobile, Alabama, 4-star commit coming over as a linebacker. I don't know. If, I ain't gonna do it right now, but we'll talk about it in a second. Jermichael Garrett was the next commitment of the day, linebacker from Gulf Shores. He also is a 4-star commit, and he is a part of the 2026 class. So the first 3 commits from the day, all 2026 guys, and then you had your 2 2025 commits coming, and that's Blake Woody, cornerback from Baltimore, Maryland, 4-star, and of course, the aforementioned Antonio Coleman, the former Auburn, now former Bama commit, flipping back to Auburn
Right.
over from Saraland, Alabama, which is a big thing. Listen,
Maryland.
Saraland has
Yeah.
been controversial in the Auburn, Alabama recruiting wars that have been happening, but 4-star defensive lineman now recommitted to Auburn, but still potentially making a trip to Alabama soon. So we'll see how that goes.
Foolishness.
But those are the 5 commits from this weekend. Just thoughts on the haul there from Auburn there.
It was a good haul. Like I said, I mean, you got enough 2026 commits to be ranked number one at this point. Now, obviously, we'll see if that holds. We're a long way from 2026. So you got a whole 2024 season to play. 2025 season to play. I mean, we'll see. We'll see where that lands. But the pickup of Blake Woodby,
Hmm.
right? He is such an interesting commit. Now, Nash, he's got a national ranking on 247 of as the 129th rated player in the 2025 class. But ESPN says he's the 22nd best player in the country.
Right.
So that, yeah, I mean, you're getting a guy who is kind of all over the board. On three, had him as an unrated 3-star. So he is all over the place in terms of their evaluation. I hope Auburn hopes he's closer to that 22nd ranking that ESPN has on him. Obviously, reminds me a lot of the kid that they got from Tennessee a few years ago, Dylan Brooks. He was like that. ESPN ranked him the 18th overall player, but then some of the other websites had him outside 150. It was very strange. But look,
Hopefully
man,
he's not like Dylan Brits, because it seems as if those other spots might have been more right about him, because I haven't heard. I mean, he might. I don't know. Is he doing anything for Tennessee? I haven't talked to
Yeah,
Tennessee fans.
I
Are they
heard his
expecting
name
big? Well, where is he? Actually, he left Auburn,
and
and
went somewhere.
yeah, I
Yeah,
forgot
like
where he went after he left Auburn. But like, I don't know. Is Dylan Brooks doing anything wherever he is right now?
yeah, you're right. It seems like the people who had him rated lower may have been right.
Yeah,
But look, Woodby was a good pickup. Auburn
Kansas.
continues to
Thank you,
try.
James Sawyer. That's where he is right
Kansas, is
now.
that where
So
he
yeah.
went? Yeah. The continue to bolster that secondary and get strong corner play in. Hugh Freeze is really, really big on wide receivers, corners, safeties. Those skill position athletic
Hmm.
types. He said stack them to the ceiling here, and so that pickup I thought was really big for him. For them. Now this is a kid out of the Baltimore area.
Yeah.
Um, and quietly, they have some very good football players in that DC, Metro Baltimore area up there. I lived up there for a few years. I can tell you some really good football players that come out of there. And I think that was a strong pick. Now they only had 220. Well, we mentioned they only had 225 guys. And so you needed to make sure that you're filling needs, I think, at this point, rather than just kind of getting more bodies in. I think Blake Woodby fills a need for them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, listen, I am a build it from the trenches guy. I think Coach Hugh Freeze adopts that. I like what they've done with the offensive line already in this class.
Hmm.
Defensive line is a place where Coach Freeze has been noted as saying he felt like he was thin last season. Thinks they're a little bit better, maybe six deep along the defensive line. So I think that, and I say all that to say this Antonio Coleman situation, I think, is important for this staff. They want to be able to bring him into the fold, because if you can continue to have him there, you can keep Malik Autry out of the clutches of Ohio State, who is doing everything to pull him away, and you can Caleb Falk, who is currently in this class as an edge rusher, is going to be big. And Jordan Crawford, who I think is a very underrated prospect in this class. If you can keep those guys in the fold, you've got some good uh, players along that defensive front to pair with what you have
Yeah.
as what I think is a strong offensive line class to lead into the future from the guys that you know that you're already going to have coming, or you assume are coming back. I don't want to say no in the age of NIL and the transfer portal, but you've got some strong young players along that defensive front that you add some more into this class coming in, and you really are starting to build the trenches the way that you really need to.
There's a developing storyline happening between Hugh Freeze and Kalen DeBoer. Now, a lot of folks thought that uh, recruiting would fall off under DeBoer. It hasn't. He's rebounded from, I think, the exodus of players they had once Saban announced that he was retiring.
Right.
They were able to hold on to convince some of those guys to come back. But it seems as if Alabama has opened up the
For sure.
pocketbooks, and they're gonna do everything they can to make sure that DeBoer has what he needs from a talent perspective. Now, we'll see. I go back and forth with people about his scheme and whether it'll work in the SEC. Ultimately, I think that'll be the biggest factor in whether he can continue the recruiting momentum. But look, I mean, Coleman seems he's flip flopped here, a couple
A few
times.
times, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but like if you're Hugh Freeze, you want to win more of those than you lose, right? Like you want to be able to say, look, man, you cannot right. You what you can't do is I think that people could accept losing recruits to Nick Saban.
Yeah.
They would accept losing to to Alabama while Nick Saban was because everybody was losing to
Right.
them, right? Nobody was beating them, and but they're not going to accept that with a different guy at the helm, right? There's got to be more wins than losses there in terms of recruiting battles, so that you can get more wins than losses on the field,
Yeah.
and that's what it boils down to. So I don't know that DeBoer is going to be what Saban was in terms of hiring great assistants and always seeming to know how to pull it out, you know, no matter what circumstances they were facing. Look at last season. People were gloom and doom. Is Jalen Milroe the guy, all this stuff, and then they ended up making the playoff.
Right.
And that is classic Alabama. I just don't think that that is going to be an acceptable status quo with DeBoer's coach. So if you're Hugh Freeze, you've got to get in here and you've got to show recruits that, look, man, Auburn is a better program to be at right now. Forget what they did in the past. That has nothing to do with you.
Right.
Right? Like he's building something new here, and it's not better than what I had. I think you can just admit, look, man, Saban is the GOAT. He was a GOAT. He did it great. DeBoer is not. If you're Hugh Freeze, this isn't your first time around the block in the SEC. You cannot get out recruited by Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah.
You can't. You can't let him come in and take recruits. You can't have guys flipping that way.
Yeah, I
So,
think they've got a lot of work to do to change perceptions out there, and it's a portion of this is going to have to be, and this is something that we've talked about really over the last year, is going to have to be the proof of concept on the field.
right.
Like that's why the 6-7 season last year stung so much. Like, of course, you don't want to have your New Mexico State loss. You don't want to have the very anticlimactic and disappointing. I don't even want to use the word anticlimactic, heartbreaking loss at the end of the Iron Bowl last season. You don't want to have those things just in general, but you don't want to have that in a season where you only get 6 wins and you really had an opportunity to have 8. So you need to start showing a way that you've got winning DNA in your locker room and on your coaching staff for Coach Hugh Freeze. And these young men that are making their decisions are going to start to lean your direction a little bit more. Now, they've done a tremendous job of recruiting despite I think would have been some failures on the field in that first season. And
Yeah.
that is 100% kudos to Coach Hugh Freeze and his ability to put that staff together. That's done a great job of getting those commitments from young men coming out of high school. And I think this recruiting staff has gotten even better this season, which is
Yeah.
crazy to think how well they recruited last year. I think that they've actually done better as a recruiting staff as far as just a person to person. They might have upgraded across the board in their ability to go out there and recruit. But this year, you've got to show it on the field in order to keep that momentum going.
Yeah. The message has been we're not there yet, but we will be after you get here. We need you. We need you to be the piece in the puzzle that we need to complete the picture and get Auburn football back to the days where they could compete. If you follow us on Twitter at the War Report, you follow me or Ike TWR Ike Jones at Mike Giddens. I posted a highlight Ike of the 2017 Iron Bowl,
Mm-hmm.
and in watching the replay of that game, uh, there were plays being made on both sides of the ball. Kerryon Johnson was an absolute monster in that game. Jared Stidham was dropping darts, right? Defensively, they were getting turnovers, getting to the quarterback. Jalen Hurts was the quarterback of that team. Now, we all know how that ended. They went on to win a national championship incredulously after losing the Iron Bowl that year. And Auburn had a chance to make the playoff, but couldn't get it done against Georgia in the second matchup. But I think what Hugh Freeze is trying to do here, and the reason why I brought up that Iron Bowl was, the path is a little different now with the 12-team playoff,
Right.
right? In a 12-team playoff that year, Auburn is in.
True.
Auburn makes the 12-team playoff in 2017. But especially beating Georgia and Alabama, back to back. But if you're Hugh Freeze, you want enough bullets in your gun to win that rematch. It's very difficult to beat the same team twice in one season.
Yeah.
And Usually the team that loses has the upper hand, right? The team that wins may get lulled into a false sense of, well, what we did worked. It was, obviously carry on got run into the ground, and there were some things that went against Auburn in that rematch. But you want enough guys on your team that you can outgun them. That's what you want. You want enough guys on your team that you can outgun a team like Georgia twice in the same season.
Yeah.
Because in a 12-team playoff, it's very possible that
One
you
it
might have to play somebody twice
it
to get
almost feels unlikely that you're not going to have some sort of rematch between
rematch from the SEC in the
SEC and
12-team playoff.
Big Ten and SEC, like both, if one, if not both of those conferences will have some sort of big rematch because they play a conference championship game, and likely both teams from that conference championship game will make the 12-team playoff, and they're likely going to be one of the best teams in the country.
Right.
It feels very unlikely that you don't see a rematch.
I think it would be difficult. It's difficult in this league to out scheme the better coaches twice. Right. So it comes down to dudes at that point, and you just need more than they have. You need guys who will go out and win those 50-50 balls more than 50% of the time. You need guys who are bigger, faster, stronger, smarter,
Yeah.
quicker, understand the game and can process it at a high level. And you need more of them. Now, nobody has more of them than Kirby Smart right now.
Right.
I saw a joke that it was just like, who's going to take down Georgia? And someone was like, right now it looks like the Athens Police Department. But I, he's got so many good players that when they process a guy out, I believe that Ra Thomas is going to get kicked off the team there. Do you think they're worried about that?
Um, Worry, I think,
I
is
don't know.
strong. I think they
Yeah,
feel good about, having some other guys in place, but
they
Ra
can
was
step in.
definitely
Yeah,
gonna be one of the guys though. So
yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, you brought him there for a reason,
yeah.
but your world is not ending because
Yeah,
he
I
got
don't think
kicked
it
off the
makes
team.
or breaks their
For
season.
their
Yeah,
season. Yeah, it will be a footnote. Nobody will look back at the successes or lack thereof for Georgia and say Ra Thomas would have been the difference. That's the type of roster that Hugh Freeze is trying to build. Now, right now, it feels very Cam Coleman or bustish, right?
from
Yeah.
what we've seen
So,
so far, I would say that
yeah,
that's probably
right.
the sentiment of a lot of Auburn fans. It's like if Cam Coleman doesn't do his thing, you still got some other guys there, Perry Thompson. But yes, I
Mhm.
do agree with that. Yeah,
Yeah, it feels very I'm not saying that it will be. I'm just saying it's how it feels right
yeah,
now. But wait until he gets 2 more recruiting cycles under his belt, and it won't feel that way.
right.
Now, Cam obviously is the guy that you want, but if he has to be out for any reason, you want to know that you have enough guys that you can continue to run your offense and just continue to be great when he comes back.
Right.
So, that's what Hugh Freeze is trying to build here. It's going to be interesting in a 12-team playoff era where you don't have to win the SEC or even be the runner-up to make the playoff. I think that 2 teams make it automatically. I think a third is more almost certain, right? And a fourth is very likely.
Yeah, I'd be shocked at a scenario where the SEC does not have at least three. Um, and for like you said, I'd put a pretty high wager if you were setting Vegas odds on number of teams from the SEC to make the 12-team playoff. I would put it at 3.3.5 would be the number, and I would
Right.
pick. I likely would take the over in that and say, well, four is probably the
Four,
right
four
number.
is probably where
Yeah,
it's going to be a good
yeah,
number. The last year, we know it. Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss, Missouri all make that playoff, right? Easily. And, all top 10 teams. So how can you think that they're one of the 10 best teams in the country, but not one of the best 12 that deserve to make the playoffs? I'm not sure that math pans out. I think people are going to hate this a lot outside of the SEC. When we sat down with Greg Sankey and we talked about recruiting and we talked about the quality of players and coaches in the conference, Ike, I asked him, I said, do you think maybe the conference might consider going to a 9-conference
right.
game schedule? And his answer was funny, man. He said, well, we need more data points to make that decision. And I said, that sounds like if we get 4 teams in, no, and if we don't,
Right.
then maybe we'll think about it, right? Like, so because he's going to do what's best for the league, but the coaches have to do their part, and that means recruiting the best players in the country, developing the best players in the country and winning at a high level. That's what Hugh Freeze is trying to achieve here. He's trying to be in that conversation. Sankey has spoken with Hugh Freeze, likes what he hears from him. Since they made the decision to bring him back to the SEC at Auburn, and look, man, they've got a vision for this thing. I think at Auburn football, where it is similar to what he was trying to do at Ole Miss. However, it's Ole Miss and it's harder. I mean, think about it. Lane Kiffin is great at developing, but is he getting? He's not getting five. He's not running 5-star kids through the SIP.
No, he might get them in the transfer portal after they get
Right. Yeah.
are
Yeah.
disappointed
Yeah. But
somewhere
out of
else.
high
Yeah.
school, yeah, that's not where they're really choosing to go. Not in great numbers anyway. And he's got great success. He's got proof of concept. I mean,
Yeah, his
he's
offenses
playing.
have been amazing. There's just no doubt
Yeah, I
about that.
mean, and he had a 10-2 team last year that only lost to Alabama and Georgia, and he can't do it. So ultimately, I think you can do it at Auburn. I think that coaches have proven that you can recruit at a high level at Auburn, and Hugh Freeze has the resources. So we'll see. After Big Cat, if we see some more
Yeah.
commitments to fill out that 2025 class.
Yeah, I think people left with a good feeling about where Auburn is in recruiting right now and good momentum. It's going to be up to those guys to close the deal, though. Can they close the deal with some of those guys that are teetering on the edge? Because I think some of these
Uh,
young men are wanting to go ahead and figure this out before school starts, right? More and more of these young men are making their commitments before the football season starts so they can go into their senior season without having to worry about trying to, have like, look, and I'm shutting it down. This is where I'm going, and you can still call, but I might not answer type of thing
yep.
going on with those. So it's crunch time right now from Big Cat weekend because school's starting here next month and high school football seasons will be beginning very soon. So we'll see where that goes.
This show is brought to you by Joy Mode. Use joymode.com to get yourself some powder that will do some things for you. Let's call out the obvious. Everyone wants to head into the bedroom with confidence, feeling like the best version of themselves. But the problem is, sometimes our thoughts get in the way of our performance, or maybe we feel like we're just not reaching our full potential. What are our options? Let the intrusive thoughts win, pick up a sketchy gas station pill, or get prescribed a drug with a long list of side effects. That's where our friends over at Joy Mode come in. Imagine a supplement you can take like your favorite greens packet that gives you that extra dose of confidence and saves you the embarrassment and hassle of a traditional erection pill. Stir it in 6 to 8 ounces of water, 45 minutes before you have the boom boom time and watch the magic unfold. This is the only supplement you'll need in the bedroom, but it also supports your blood vessels, cardiovascular health, athletic performance, and blood pressure. Use joymode.com and use code rapport. We guarantee she'll never leave you after this.
For full episodes, make sure you head over to the War Report's YouTube channel and check out the Weekend Tailgate. Every Sunday, we're going live. Join us on the live stream at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. Until the next time, War Eagle.